everyone, Kelly from ATOL and our Lead the Standard podcast. Welcome to episode 7. If you're struggling with highlighting your experience in quality management systems and ISO standards in your resume, in this episode, we're addressing that exact challenge. We're sharing practical tips and real-world examples to help your resume stand out. If you stick around to the end, we're once again opening the floor to the ATOL community for questions about today's topic and all things ISO management systems and auditing. As always, we are recording live, so what happens when recording stays on the recording. So stay tuned to discover how you can craft the perfect ISO fit resume for you.
God.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Leading the Standard ATOL. I am Kelly, and with me once again is Jackie, our triple certified ISO auditor and director. We are thrilled to have you with us today for episode 7, which we were just talking about. Can't believe it's already episode 7. Building an effective resume the ISO fit way. Also appropriate given we were just talking about Pilates. I'm actually going to dive straight into this one, but please don't forget to stick around until the end because we will open the floor to the ATOL community for questions about today's topic or anything else relating to ISO management systems auditing. So today, as I said, special episode based on edition 53 of the LTS newsletter, which you can find on LinkedIn if you haven't received it in your inbox. We did get an interesting question from our community, and it's one that many of you can relate to. The question is, I am reaching out because I could really use your expertise and guidance on my resume. I'm preparing it for a career in the ISO industry, and I've been following your blog and training programs. Smart person, this one. I have a challenge with my resume. I'm struggling to highlight my relevant experience in quality management and ISO standards. My previous roles have involved various responsibilities, and I'm not sure how to tailor my resume to emphasize the most relevant skills and achievements. I'd really appreciate any tips or examples you could provide me to help address these challenges. So this is incredibly timely because I have spent the last few weeks trawling through quite literally hundreds of resumes. So this topic is very on point for me too. So today, Jackie, if we can share some practical tips and strategies to help people stand out with their resume and showcase their expertise, that would be awesome. So Jackie, let's just jump straight in. How do you think people can how do you suggest people highlight their skills and relevant experience, making them...
Sorry, Kelly.
No,
I suppose we're coming from two different directions. When I wrote this, and my direction is always ISO, and it's about helping people to understand how to showcase their resumes in the ISO industry, but where your experience comes in is a lot broader and how they present it and the wording and the language that they use. So it's probably a good combination as usual. So that's going to be my focus. But I really want you to dip in and share your experience as well. So with regards to the ISO requirements or my, I suppose, key actions or steps or review of your resume, there's just 3 things that I share if you're wanting to tweak your resume to, I suppose, get yourself out there for ISO related roles. So the 3 things are: 1, include your industry types or sectors, and I'll go into that a little bit more. Use the language of your audience. Okay, and that's where you'll be able to help as well. And then get some external feedback. I've put that external feedback in because I know for me, I don't know about you, Kelly, but I actually struggle when I look at myself and my own experience. I sort of can't see the forest for the trees. It's like, I don't know. I just do that. How is that different? I need an external perspective to help me to unpack it. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay.
Really? That's obvious.
Yeah, because I think we get too close to it and we struggle on our own. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, there's also that whole tall poppy thing where people don't want to talk themselves up too much, or that imposter syndrome. Oh, I can't do that when you've been doing it for 25 years or so. So yeah, that external input is really, I think is really, and certainly something we can dive into deeper.
Yeah, and that's true. I guess, that imposter syndrome, you think, oh, yeah, that isn't really what it means. I don't think I can do that. It reminds me many years ago in classroom training, I had a gentleman, he was an engineer, and he'd worked in quality. He was a fly-in, fly-out worker. He was based in Sydney. Ranjit was his name. It's just come to me. I had some lovely coffee catch-ups with him. And after our training, we had this discussion about, okay, how do you get into, he wanted to get into quality, environment, and OH&S, so IMS, integrated management world. But his experience was as a quality engineer, okay, as a fly-in, fly-out worker, as an engineer. Anyway, I gave him this advice about including your industry types, update your experience to include any exposure you'd had to OH&S and environment. Anyway, he rang me and he said, I'm really struggling with this, Jackie, because I don't have any experience in environment and OH&S. And I said, really? Is that really correct, Ranjit? It's like you work, so he works in like oil and gas, fly in, fly out. Surely, as an engineer that goes out on site, environment and OH&S is embedded in every single worker's day. And I had to say to him, just because it's not in your job title doesn't mean you haven't been exposed to it. Like, have you been a part of a risk identification workshop? Oh, yeah, we all get together, from the different departments, and we go through and identify hazards and environmental aspects and impact. I said, sorry, say that again. It's like, so he just had to be prompted and I suppose have a discussion about, well, what is your day-to-day? And then those exposure moments, that's what he needed to bring in to his resume. Okay. And he was worried. Sorry?
So I think people forget that exposure. It is. Is it in my job title? Is it in my PD? Not what do I actually do?
Yes. And that was his big, I suppose, block. And then he felt like he wasn't telling the truth. I said, no, we're not saying that you were the health and safety environmental manager. We just want to bring in your experiences and exposure into those bullet points in your resume to show that you have been a part of a risk identification workshop, hazard ID, environmental aspects. Just tell them what you've been a part of. You're not saying it was in your title, but as a quality engineer in this role, these are the things that you did.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hard part. You need someone to help you to pull out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we've had that discussion here working through our own roles. We've got job descriptions, titles, and then we go through that and we found pages of things that we do that aren't in those, not because of any reason other than it's just organically part of what you do. It's just you can't write every task or everything that you're involved in or every thing you touch. You can't fit all of that into a PD. It's just unrealistic.
Yeah. And you're right with what you're saying. You just reminded me, like, it's sometimes is hard to reflect, in hindsight. Whereas you and I, in that recent exercise we did, we actually intentionally, I'll pinch our lovely marketing lady Hazel's word, we intentionally took note of every single task we did every day. And it was actually really quite surprising, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's actually a really good point.
Whole new team as a result.
Yeah. And I think more to come. Yeah. So, I thought of Ranjit with this and, it's something that does pop up and it's very, very common. So that was my short answer.
Was it?
Sorry. So
Oh.
now I'm going to break down each of those points. But before I do that, I think you shared that this is Leader Standard Newsletter 53.
53.
Yeah, 53. And for those of you that have read it or will read it, you'll see in that article that I included a quote from Tom Peters. And I thought the quote was quite interesting. Yes, it will make us feel uncomfortable, and we'll unpack that. But he said that all of us need to understand the importance of branding. We are I'll start again. We are CEOs of our own companies, me incorporated. To be in business today, our most important job is to be head marketer for the brand called you. And I thought, oh, that's spot on. And this is sort of new to, well, I'll say new to older people like me.
Yeah. I didn't mean to be so. Yeah.
Yeah, to get used to, I think, and we're not sort of used to marketing ourselves. And with resumes, it has always been there, but that quote is so much bigger than just your resume. And I'm sorry, again, I'm getting off topic, but it is about marketing. Your resume is part of marketing yourself.
Yeah.
And absolutely, in this day and age, there's so much noise. You have to figure out your branding, how you're selling yourself, and your resume is part of that.
And just to kind of go off a little bit, resume doesn't necessarily have to be, here's my CV. Think of like we use LinkedIn a lot. LinkedIn is also your resume. Whether it might be a simpler version, but that's another way that you could be sharing this information. So apply this to both. I think they're both relevant. I'm sure there's other platforms out there other people use, but that's what we use. But to just say what you're talking about branding there, I'm going to tell a story about Jackie. When I met Jackie nearly 9 years ago, yes, she was a trainer, and yes, she was bubbly and this gym junkie, I want to call her, but she wasn't as comfortable putting herself out there in this. Well, certainly Jackie 9 years ago was never doing a podcast, never doing videos, never doing a live stream. And then I've watched Jackie work with the amazing team at Girl Director and grow brand Jackie Stapleton. You see her everywhere now, but that come with confidence and being a market leader. For me, I'm sorry, Jackie, I'm just going to go under the bus a bit, but when I left school, we were always talking about it's branding you and what's your brand. And like as soon as I got into the workforce, it was all about self-branding, that terminology. But to watch somebody who didn't grow up with that, for lack of a better term, suddenly put themselves in that position and see what Jackie has achieved in a relatively short amount of time. I'm going to say 8 years is a short amount of time, and it certainly hasn't been that long. It's been much shorter than that. But to watch that and that focus of, oh, okay, I actually need to put myself out there and make myself different to everybody else that's got the same skills or the same experience. What's the Jackie factor or the me factor? It is very important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the important thing you highlighted there is it can be uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And as you said as well, bringing it back just to your resume, and you said it initially, it's like, oh no, you get that imposter syndrome. Like, oh, I can't put that in my resume. That's not right. And Ranjit was the same. So yeah, it is an ongoing process. So yes, some of you younger people might be more comfortable with it, but we do get this question a lot, especially I guess a lot of people coming into the industry are sort of shuffling a career change, and it is about changing the language and the wording as well, and understanding really what it is they do know.
Mm. We a perfect example the last 2 days. I'm not going to drop her name, but if she's listening, she will know. We had a beautiful young woman joining us for virtual training the last 2 days who has had a complete career change. New mum looking to change her skills and her experience. And she said so many times over the 2 days, oh, I have no experience at all in this, or I don't understand this. And as we went along, she was answering questions that clearly demonstrated she had the skills and experience. So she's certainly someone that's going to go a long way once she gets that confidence and to start sharing her story a little bit more and getting out there. That again comes back down to that third point that you mentioned.
Yes. And speaking of confidence, I believe next week we are talking about confidence in the podcast.
Yeah.
And I think it's this week's newsletter as well, number 54. Okay. Will I start breaking each of those three down?
Let's break it down, because otherwise we'll be talking for hours and people don't need to listen to us for that long.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Okay. The first point I made was to include industry types or sectors. Now, this is something I learned moving into more of a certification auditor or consultant space in the ISO industry. I learned that it was more beneficial, or most beneficial, to highlight the industries. I know in your resume, and you've seen, as you said, hundreds of these recently, Kelly, you sort of see their work experience. Normally, most current back to hopefully not through to 1980 or something, but I say that because that's a long history. Nothing to do with age. But so you do see current and then working backwards, and you just see who the employer was, and then what roles they did there, and sometimes what is that company? What do they do? I don't understand. What industry are they in? So what I did with my resume was I actually included above it, within each part of my job or work experience, what the industry was. Okay, whether it was construction, IT, and so on. So something that helped me to break down the industries, we have something called ANZIC codes, ANZSIC, ANZIC codes, and there's also NACE codes. I think that's the European code, so that's N for Nelly, ACE. I think if you just Google NACE or ANZIC, you'll see the other, like America's, I think that's SIC code, something like that. There's some sort of code database reference tool that you can use to align these codes to the industries that you have worked in. So the reason I say this is because particularly if you're building your resume to, as I said, become a contractor, like audit for clients, a consultant, what they're looking for is your industry experience. They might specifically be looking for someone in aged care or health or construction or oil and gas. And if you've got that highlighted there, it's eye-catching. That's what you're looking for, isn't it, Kelly, when you review?
I was just going to say, yeah, there's so many gaps in that, in what I was looking at. But even you saying that, in my head, I'm going through where I have worked. And if I had put that industry assigned to it, already I'm starting to see connections to things that certainly are not in my resume. Yep. So, yeah, just that little thing starts the internal conversation around what.
That's true, actually. Yeah, because I only thought of it as a benefit for the person reading it. But you're right. If you break it down to the industry for yourself, then you're starting to go, because for you it was.
I was thinking, for me, perfect example. I was an executive assistant, but I was executive assistant for a property development, property in the sales and marketing department. So there's a property development experience, sales and marketing experience, but also a team member for the development team. So I've got construction. Yeah. So you can see
not just an executive assistant.
No. Yes. No. Yeah. I'm still going in my head. I'm not going to share. But it certainly started unraveling that spider's web.
Yep. And so that's that exposure I was talking about with Ranjit's story. And you're the same. Like while you were an EA, is that right? Yeah, that's right. You've had exposure to so much more. And that exposure and experience will support you to move into other areas.
Yeah, complete career change.
Yep. So that's why it's important. And Kelly's brought up even more. So that's the first step. Okay. Then, and Kelly, I think, will be a great help with this one. I said, use the language of the audience. This can be frustrating. And Kelly, we know you get frustrated when you're reviewing resumes because, I'll use an ISO example. Okay. So in the ISO world, we have internal audits. So if we're looking for, an auditor or even a consultant and contractor, one key element is some sort of audit experience. Okay. You may not have called it an audit where you worked previously, but if you have a look at what you've done, if you've been reviewing some documents in your job, and identifying some gaps and improving the documents, guess what? That's an audit. Okay, so you might have in your resume document review processes or something. Well, just change it and say you conducted an audit because, and this is where I'll hand it over to Kelly, because people that are reviewing your resume are looking for those keywords. They're skimming. Yeah. And if it just says review something, that's not going to stand out. You need to use the language of the audience. What are they looking for?
Absolutely. And so for background, we are just looking to expand our customer service team because they are wonderful and we need more people in that space. So we advertise that. And one of the criteria that we advertised very explicitly, and this is important too, if someone is asking for something in the advert, I strongly encourage you, if they're saying it's specific, even more reason to tailor your resume because that's exactly what they're looking for. And if you don't include that, they will overlook you. So we specifically asked for people with a understanding or experience with ISO management systems and or auditing. That was a requirement of this role. And that's to help us help our students. It makes things a little bit easier in a customer service space to understand what the student is looking for. I had in a week and a half over 500 resumes. Of those, we shortlisted, I think it was around about 30, maybe. Of those, and they're the ones that addressed the criteria. Of those, a lot of them we sent through just a questionnaire because there was something there that got our attention, but they didn't quite address the criteria. Now, I can promise you that 99.9% of other recruiters are not going to do this next step. They're just going to look at you, shortlist, do you meet the criteria? Yes, no. But we went an extra step and said, hey, you've got some words in there that are getting my attention. You haven't quite versus here's some questions that we want you to answer. Effectively, we did a delayed selection criteria process. Yep. The responses we got to those questions were completely different to what was in the resume, and that was what we were looking for.
Interesting.
Yes. And some of them had said, well, we've got this, but when we got the question, they actually didn't. They didn't know what we were talking about. Oh, I have an interest in ISO management systems audits. There were some people who in less than 5 days were familiar with all ISO management systems, which I
That's
found
amazing.
I was impressed. Of that, we said probably about 30 people we shortlisted, handful moved to interview stage.
But can I ask?
Yeah.
Because you went the opposite way than what I was expecting then. Like, yeah. Did anyone provide more information, like in their resume they hadn't realized they had this experience? Because that's what we're trying to pull out here.
That's what we were trying to pull out in that selection criteria, those questions. The interesting thing was that the few people that we have lined up for interviews and that we are considering for the role didn't necessarily have direct experience in their resume. They had used all of those keywords. So while there was a few that do have experience, there were words in there around a lot of them didn't specifically say ISO, but there was a lot of compliance, or there was as you said before, document review or peer review and those sorts of things. So they're the people that we kind of went, okay, there's something in here that addresses it, but a lot of recruiters won't. So the other thing that I found extremely helpful was, as Jackie said, I don't need to know, look, Queenslanders, we do this weird thing. Oh, I just call myself a Queenslander. Sorry, Mum.
Don't hold that against us.
Really weird thing. I'm just out of the wheel. Queenslanders do this really weird thing where we meet each other and go, oh, what high school did you go to? In 1942. Like, nobody cares. But so many people have that in their resume that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s. It's not relevant.
Yeah. That's what I was meaning before. Back to 9, it's not relevant anymore.
No, focus on those last 10 years. But maybe, as Jackie said, employer, industry and a role, you don't need to give me the details. But one thing that made people stand out was when they not just had their big paragraphs of what they did, and I think Melissa did the same thing and Christine did the same thing as well, and Hazel, Louise, like pretty much everyone we've hired, down the side or somewhere on their resume, they had a bullet list of the skills, programs, experience, in this case, ISO standards that they had exposure to.
Yeah, that's great.
Really simplify it. Use your cover letter, and I've just been prompted by a question I've received here, so I'm going to come back to that in more detail later. Use your cover letter to flourish, but keep your resume clear, concise, simple, and highlight the key points, because if you're getting 500 resumes in 10 days, you are not reading every single one of them. You are skimming, you're looking for those keywords, control find. You know what you want. You just, if you want to stand out, make sure that you read the ad, highlight all of those little things. You'd be quite surprised.
And I love that reminder you just gave me, is those resumes that we've reviewed or successful candidates, they did, and that helps with my brain because it's sort of separate to the bulk of it. Remember one resume I looked at recently, I said, I can't read this, it's like a shopping list.
Yes.
It's sometimes it's just too many bullet points. It's just like, I'm just not taking this in. It was a shopping list. So there's got to be that balance. And I think with you reminding me about having that column on the left, it's those key areas that we're looking for, like the platforms, etc.
Yeah,
that's a good addition.
Yeah, so a number of them said like familiar with and ISO and listed the ISO standards or the food safety areas and those things. Melissa's job, we were looking for someone with specific software experience. So I had those bulleted down there. I've got this platform, this platform, this platform. So, it's a pain in the neck to customize your resume for every job you apply for. But if you don't at least review it and tailor it and tweak it a little bit, you're not going to stand out.
Yeah. And we're not expecting like a full review of your resume each time, but it's just those tiny tweaks. And as you said, it's the cover letter. I actually enjoy reading people's cover letters. It tells me more of their story and then how they're linking it to what we're after. And it sort of helps my brain a little bit rather than reading a shopping list.
Yeah. Yeah. I said, I've already got a question about cover letters, so I'll come back to that with the end.
Okay. So you're okay? You don't want to talk about cover letters now?
No, I'm going to come back to that at the end. I think there's going to be some things that I think will tie in nicely with that as well.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so are you happy? We've covered include your industry types or sectors. Yeah. We've covered that. We've talked about using the language of the audience that your resume is targeting. And then finally, we sort of have touched on this throughout, is getting external feedback, because we're our own worst enemy sometimes, and it helps to have someone review your resume, ask you questions. This is actually what I enjoy doing with my clients through the career development, is asking them questions. Oh, so what did you do there? And then it's sort of like just sort of something. It's like a resume or career audit. I'm getting ideas. So it is like an audit, because you're unpacking and just getting them talking, just like you shared before with going through, what sector was that? It helps, unpack what you're doing if someone else is reviewing, looking at what you say you do. Oh my goodness, this is an audit. Looking at what you say you do in your resume and then asking you questions.
There's your operations.
I know, it is an audit. I want to start writing down my ideas, but I think I'll remember when I get off this. But it is really, getting someone external to help you to unpack it. And even if, and you might butt in here, Kelly, even if it's for a specific job, because there's a criteria. Oh my goodness, this is an audit. So you're really unpacking what your experience, but someone's looking at it from an external perspective and helping you to understand what you've actually done, what you're good at, what you should showcase.
And not external experience as well. You've just reminded me of something that we used to do with some previous staff. Was another reason to get someone to look at it is because you get so deep into it. And I do this when we're doing course content. You get so deep in it that you can't see the typos, you can't see the grammar. That sounds like perfect English, and it's not. And having someone else review it clears all of that up for you. But the other thing to do is read it out loud, not in your head. Read it out loud, because when you hear it back, you'll pick up those differences. You'll start to, as I said before, you'll start to have those ideas as you're hearing things rather than just reading it in your head out loud. So just something triggers something out back here that makes you go, ooh.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And it helps to see whether it makes sense as well.
That's the other thing. If you're reading something and you just have to stop and read it again, we'll change it, fix it, adapt it, because it's not clear.
Yeah. So that's the three things. And I suppose I came up with that corny name, the ISO Fit resume. I thought it was cool. It's ISO Fit. Okay. And Kelly, we're lucky to have Kelly here to share her overall experience as well. Not only in having her own resumes, but in reviewing more so hundreds and hundreds of resumes and seeing what comes through and what doesn't, what stands out and what doesn't. So when you combine those three, what were they? They were industry and sector experience. Well, highlighting those industries and sectors, using the language of the audience, and then getting some external feedback and unpacking, someone doing a bit of an audit on your resume. And as you said, saying it out loud, having a discussion, that's when you do realise the other experiences that you can add in there. So those three things combined That's what gives you that ISO fit resume. And I'm not saying it's not going to be tweaked along the way, but that's what's going
to do that, to tweak it along.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
Change.
Yes. Yeah. It's not, again, it's sort of like a management system, isn't it? I know I keep like comparing it, but
you're proving a point though, is that
yes,
you're writing a resume and you're reviewing your resume, you're doing a mini audit on your resume, therefore you have audit experience to add to your resume.
That's true. And you're continually improving it. You're tweaking it each time.
That's a really important one to put in there too, like being open to the principles and personal behaviors. Put them in there. I swear to God, the people that said that I'm open to improvement, I'm adaptable. I didn't like the flexible team play. Everyone's flexible. Everyone's a team player. Everyone's this. But yeah, show things that are about you growing and working with other people as well. Think about those key words that.
So what are those key words? Like, because I just think continual. I'm going to throw you under the bus. Like I thought of continual improvement, but that could be.
Yeah, somebody who's open. I'm going to open to improvement. That you are looking for data driven, evidence based.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Funny. I feel like we were teaching this 2 days ago.
Yes. System focused.
Systems focused. Curious.
That's it. That's the word. Curious.
Yeah, we look for that, and it was actually in a couple of resumes, so that was really good. But people don't go for the buzzwords. Go for like the Chat GPT or Seek or whatever. Say look for these words because everyone's using them. Think about the words that are relevant again to your industry, and make sure that they're included in your resume. Think them in there.
Yeah, and it's not just lip service.
Yeah, you need to actually, I suppose, that's really important too. Make sure that while we're talking about exposure here, and that's sufficient, make sure that you actually do have the understanding of your resume. Because I did see a lot of resumes which conveniently had the exact terminology that was in our advert, but these people had absolutely no idea what any of it meant. So make sure when you're selling yourself truthfully and honestly and using fair presentation. All those
you can back yourself up.
Yeah, because it can be
excellent. A little well, you got to give them points for trying. Like, we do talk about how to, sell yourself when you might lack a little bit of experience in certain areas. So I've got to give them points for that.
Look, and there were people that genuinely did that, and I'll come to that in a second with that the question we've got from a student. But yeah, you need to be honest in your resume. You will get caught out if you are not.
Yeah. Okay, so, I'm going to recap and then hand it back to you. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Yep. So the 3 things that create your ISO fit resume your industry types and sectors, list them. Refer to NAICS codes or ANZIC codes to help you along. Use the language of your audience. Call it what they call it, and then get some external feedback. Have a discussion. Don't maybe just email it to someone and they review it. I actually think, and this is the idea I came up with just then, is like a resume or a career experience audit. Have a discussion with someone. Use your resume as a talking point and just, have a chat about it with someone. Go and have a coffee. And the questions they ask about your work experience, as Kelly said, you'll start to get more ideas that way. So those 3 things combined, you're going to give yourself the best shot to have that ISO fit resume.
Wonderful. And again, look, it applies to everything. Even if you're not looking at ISO World, use it. Thank you, Jackie. I am going to open up the floor to the ATOL community now. So again, if you're tuning in live, catching up later, please do join in the conversation. Those of you on Zoom, you know where the chat function is. But I've already got one through over here. This is all great information about preparing a resume, but what about a cover letter and selection criteria? Yeah. So we've kind of touched on this, and Jackie, I'm happy to run with this, and you can
I was
jump
going
in.
to say, can you take that one, Kelly? Because you're far more experienced than me.
So again, with this role, we specifically look for a cover letter, and we ask for that. Again, it's a criteria for us and for auditors. I'm going to flag this. If you're looking for a role as an auditor, your ability to read and interpret and understand instructions is really important. So if a job advert asks for something, please make sure that you give it. And for us, it was a cover letter. The reason we ask for a cover letter is because of everything we just talked about. Your resume is not going to say to me, "Hi, Kelly, I'm perfect for this job. Here's my..." Sorry to those people listening to the podcast. I'm using hand gesture.
Yeah, that was a blank because
it was a pause. Yeah, your cover letter is your opportunity, and a selection criteria is the same as well. So we kind of added that in as a screening step. Your cover letter is your opportunity to explain how those skills, experience, and that exposure you have is relevant to this role. There's a lot of debate going around on LinkedIn. I've seen it on seek.com forums. Is a cover letter really necessary? If you want to stand out, yes. If you want to be the person who's just ticking a box and applying for a certain number of jobs per week to get certain benefits, etc., then that's your thing. As a recruiter, it's really frustrating. And I know from watching friends do it for years, if you're not standing out from the crowd, you're going to have a big kick in the guts confidence issue. Deflation. So you need to do what you can to stand out. And for that particular friend, she had a great resume, but she never read a cover letter. So no one knew her personality, etc. But for me, again, the cover letters that stood out, their resumes didn't necessarily have the skills and experience, those key words that we were just mentioning before. But I don't have experience with this, but I have been exposed to this in my role as this, where I did this. And I believe that links into what you're looking for in this way. The people that we moved from shortlist to interview process had a cover letter that explained to us, okay, my industry experience isn't exactly what you're looking for. Some of it was, but those who didn't, they were able to demonstrate their understanding of their transferable skills. You cannot demonstrate your transferable skills in a resume. Your resume, as Jackie said before, a lot of them were shopping lists. A lot of them were my life stories, but they were your life story in that role. It's not how this role connects to the role you're applying for. And whether that's as a consultant or as an auditor or as someone just wanting to get into the ISO world, a cover letter is your personal brand, your billboard. Look at me. I can do everything that you want, but I haven't necessarily done it before, but I can see how I can do that, how I can pick that up, how I can transfer this. A lot of, again, another perfect example. I haven't used HubSpot, but I have used this, and this CRM, and I believe those systems are the same. And I will pick that up. So that's a
transferable.
Exactly. So your cover letter is your connection between your resume and the role. And as I said, use it as your own personal billboard. Hot tip, please don't, well, I suppose it depends on the role that you're applying for. Having a photo on your resume is great. Make it professional, please. Yeah. I've seen lots of very attractive people who didn't necessarily have the skills we were looking for, but I'm sure they would be very successful in other careers. Make sure, again, that your cover letter, formatting, layout, content really demonstrates who you are, but connects as I said, connecting your resume to the role. That's so important.
All that professionalism. And I actually like how you said that this cover letter is like your billboard. It sort of goes back to that Tom Peters quote that we talked about earlier on.
Tried to do that on purpose.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So, and I didn't actually join the dots there, but that is the purpose of the cover letter, is your branding. It's personalized. But I also like, and this is something people have to remember, and you highlighted this first, you do it. You request the cover letter for consideration for the role to check that they can read and follow instructions, because that's very important to any job. And if they don't, well, if they can't follow the instructions at that level, well, sorry. So just be aware of that.
Full disclosure, if there was no cover letter, I did not look at the resume. And I'm sure so many others saved me a heck of a lot of time.
Yep.
But if you can't follow the instructions in the job advert, and a lot of them do it, my dad tells me a story. Sorry, he was a trainer and assessor in the Army, and he wrote in one of the assessments, one of the criteria that he added, because he's my dad, was that
now we know who to blame.
They had to include a movie quote in there or something, and some of these were pages and pages long essays, and it was this particular quote, and someone threw it in there. And to this day, my dad tells lots of stories. He tells this story all the time. And this student could not believe that this assessor had taken the time to actually read it and check. He said, I couldn't believe that the student had actually read the criteria and done what I'd asked them to do.
Yeah.
It's simple things. Read and do. That's a whole other newsletter podcast episode coming. Thanks, Dad. So welcome to the Taylor family. I think that's really important. And again, put effort into your cover letter. I know that, again, a lot of people said it is a billboard. It is that connection to the role. Make sure it connects the role to your resume. Please, again, from experiences, make sure that when you are doing your cover letter that you address it to the correct company for the correct role. And if you are going to have ChatGPT write your cover letter for you, please adapt it, because once again, for this time, we had identical cover letters to a previous job that we had advertised, copy paste job description, job title. But also, again, we had 7 or 8 students who submitted exactly the same cover letter. I don't believe that they were the same person nor known to each other, but their cover letters were perfectly worded the same. So
interesting.
Yeah. So please make sure that you take your time with your resume and your cover letter. And selection criteria is the same. It's your opportunity to demonstrate your connection with your skills, experience, exposure to the particular role. So I hope that answered that question for that.
Yes. Thank you.
Welcome. Did you have anything else to add to that, Jackie?
I don't. I think you finished it off well.
Yeah. My frustrations. I very much look forward to introducing everybody in the next few weeks to our newest ATOL team member. I think we've got some great candidates in there with all of that said and done, and I'm very much looking forward to introducing the next ATOL team member to everyone. So I am going to close today's episode. Again, thank you everybody for joining us. I am very much also looking forward to next week. Next week, we are going to be talking about edition 54 of the Lead the Standard newsletter, episode 8. As Jackie said, boost your ISO confidence, essential preparation steps for success. So check your inboxes now for that newsletter. It will be out on LinkedIn very shortly, but join us next week when we have a good chat about all things ISO confidence. Thank you, Jackie. Good one.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
See you all next week. Thanks for joining us once again as we lead the standard. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast for more episodes just like this. And don't forget to leave a review if you found today's episode informative and inspiring. If you're already an ATOL student, remember participating in live Q&A sessions just like this is one of the exclusive perks of your enrolment. And if you're not already a student, join us at our website www.auditortrainingonline.com to learn more about our courses and how you can start making a difference in your career in ISO management system standards. So join us again next week as we not just meet the standards, but we lead them.